Hi there, this is Linda, and I'm so excited December is here. So let's go ahead and start working on my album. Okay guys, so I already have my album set up. If you missed my foundation pages, I do have a full video walkthrough of those. So I will share that up at the eye. I also have a process video for my cover page, which you can find on the Allie Edwards blog. And I will link all of my December daily content that is elsewhere from this year down below so you can find that if you are looking. I'm going into day one. I had created this page right here, which I'm gonna go ahead and take out of the album to work on. But this page, I made a note on the back that it's 4 inches wide. And my intention for day one was to have a full page photo or something that went all the way across here and across there. Now, when I originally thought of this, I figured day one was going to not be a super crafty or like a day with a good story because I had like an oil change appointment and like boring kind of stuff going on the first. And I figured it would be a good day to document one of the stories that happened earlier in the season. And I have quite a few of those. So one of the ones I decided to document and I decided I'm going to use for this day is the story of my daughter's advent calendar. Now, I was having a fight with my printer. So you see I printed out a few of these. But basically I printed this at an 8.5 by 11, which is a full page photo. It is a little bit yellower than I would like. I was trying to make it more blue tone, but I just could not get my printer to do that. And I decided that I'm just gonna work with it. And if I can figure out a hack for that later, I will. But basically I need to just trim this down because it's 8.5 by 11 rather than 8.25. So the height of the album is 8.25. And then the width of the album is 7 inches plus the 4 for the back of this is 11, which is a perfect full page here. So I printed this borderless on my home printer on the standard 8.5 by 11 paper. And that's my intention will be that I'm gonna crop this. So I need to cut that down to 4 inches. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the back of this one, like that. And then this will be a standalone page in the album. And then you're gonna be able to flip this out like that to open up day one. I did some journaling here on vellum that I'm gonna crop down and adhere. Maybe I might put it there or I might have it here. I'm not entirely sure yet. And I might do something like behind it. I don't need to add the one because the one is here. And I'm probably gonna put like a tab or something. I wanted to keep it pretty simple for day one because I didn't have a ton of time to craft today, just a little bit. And I wanted to make sure that I kind of stayed on top of this project, at least in the beginning of the month. I do expect that I will fall behind as the month goes on because that is life. I do have planned some simpler days just because I know sometimes when I'm going to be busy this month that I won't have a chance to plan my album. But I just want to make note of that because typically on the 1st, everyone's so excited to dive into this project that they are already, to do a super creative page for day one. And I'm here saying that that is not my intention for day one. My intention for day one is to just start with a good momentum in this album. I'm just trying to trim this so it doesn't have an extra edge. And I just want to have day one documented as a good starting place for my project and to get that momentum. I anticipate day two is going to be a bigger story with a lot of photos and a lot of stuff going on, but I'm also not going to have time to document that on actual day two. So I'm not entirely sure exactly how that will go, but I will share that also in this video. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on fast forward and get this one put together. Okay, so like I said, day one is fairly simple. What I'm doing to start is punch out my holes here. I'm just clipping these 2 pages together. I already had the holes punched in the foundation page that I made for day 1, so that way I know that the holes are going to be lined up. Then I'm cropping down my journaling, which I printed out on vellum. My idea was to place it on this left-hand side over the top of the photo, but it turned out that it was a little bit hard to read, so I just took a scrap of the vellum and added that behind it. So there's just 2 pages of vellum kind of layered there, which makes it a little more opaque rather than transparent. So you can still see the photo through it, but you can read the journaling a bit easier. This washi tape was from Ali Edwards from an older release, maybe 2020, I'm not sure, but I cut it down to a piece that says kids from 1 to 92 is what the phrase is, but I think I had to cut it off. So I think it says kids from 1 to 90, which is fine because you know what the quote is. And I'm just adding that on there. I partially added that because the vellum piece I added behind it didn't line up perfectly, but I basically just wanted a little bit of a border there. I pulled this puffy circle from my stash, which I think was from last year's release, to add something onto the photo. There was a little gap from the gifts, so I just filled that in, and then I added a couple stickers, that last one from day 1's advent calendar, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later into this video, but I do have the sticker advent calendar this year, and I am choosing to use the stickers each day, or trying to challenge myself to. I know I'm not going to be able to use it every single day just because sometimes it doesn't work and I'm not going to force it, but I am challenging myself to try to use it. The last thing I did was pulled one of the tab stickers. I believe those were an add-on this year, and stapled that onto that insert and called day 1 done. Okay, so I'm back to film day 2. It has been a day. I finished in the first part of this video, day 1. And I think I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video that I'm going to film these a couple of days at a time. So you should expect those videos from me every few days here on YouTube, but I will be sharing each day separately on Instagram. Oh, this is trash on there. I also forgot to mention a few things at the beginning of my video. So one, I have the Advent sticker calendar, and I'm challenging myself to try to use it every day on my page. I'm not going to force it if it's not working, but so far, so good. So this was day 1, that sticker pack, and I really just used the one right here, but I'm happy with that. I just want to use these products. So day 2, it was some puffy numbers, and then I have the 2 here, which I think I'm going to use those on day 2. So for day 2, my initial thought was to do a full page spread, and I had put this joy word in here to use for day 2. For day 2, my story is about an adventure that my daughter and I went on to a local town about an hour and a half south from where we live, where we just kind of spent the day. We did some shopping, we went out to eat, and I wanted to use the joy initially, but the more I thought about it, I decided I'm going to save this maybe for day 3 and put it on the back. So actually, I think I'm going to just leave this in here for now so I don't forget about it. But what I'm going to end up doing is doing a full page spread that is the back of day 1 and another full page over here. So I do need some pattern paper for the background here, but I'm not yet committed to that. But basically, my idea is I have these chipboard frames, and I think some of these were an add-on this year, and then I think these 2 were in the Paisley Press mini kit, but they are the same size. And what I'm thinking is if I take these, so there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I feel like there would have been 8, but I don't see another one. So maybe there's only 7, but whatever. I'm going to put this one with it. I will actually look though and see, just to make sure I didn't miss that one. Let's see. No, there's a 4x6 frame, but I don't see another one of these, but that does seem odd that it came with an odd number. But still, I do like this one is a different one in here. And so my thought is I'm going to kind of stagger these on pattern paper, And each one I printed out some photos and some journaling. So the journaling is going to go behind one of them. And then the photos are going to go behind the other 6 of these. And those are going to be like the 6 stops that we made. And I will number them with these. And I printed out titles for those. And then I have the last one will have the number. And I'm thinking I'm just going to put this card behind there and use that as my number. But I'm not sure yet exactly how I want to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on fast forward while I get that put together. Okay, so this page takes a little while to come together, but it is pretty formulaic. So when I was on the computer, I had selected and printed 6 photos from my trip to Newburgh with my daughter. So we went on this adventure on the 2nd, and if you follow me on Instagram, I shared a lot of these photos on my stories in addition to quite a few more. So on that trip, we went to multiple locations, and it really pained me to have to narrow it down to 1 photo per location. Some of them, it was easy to select a photo, but the main one, the very first location, or I guess it's the second one on here that we stopped at, I really struggled to narrow it down to 1, but I figured I will include other photos in other projects about this adventure. And so I trimmed down 6 photos, and then I trimmed down some words labeling each of the 6 locations that we went to. And then my plan was to use the 2 in the final frame. I had pulled over the 2 from the advent calendar from last year because I didn't love that this one had the white background, but I really liked the red, so I decided to go with the one from this year. And you'll see what I do to kind of fix that white background in later in this video. First, I'm going through and trying to select a background pattern paper. Because this is a 2-page spread that goes across 2 full pages in my 6x8 album, I need 7 by 8.25 for each side, or 14 by 2.5, or 8 by 8.2.5, inches of paper. But the pattern papers in the kit are 11 by 8.25. So they are not long enough to go 14 inches. So I needed to pair 2 papers together. So I was looking at those 2 star ones on the left, and I really liked how those 2 went together. But with my photos and the number 2 being red, I really wanted to do the red color scheme instead. So ultimately, I decided to go with these 2 papers. This is a red and gold paper. I believe it's from the main kit, but I really am not sure. And I cut it in half. So I have 2 pieces that are, I guess they're 5.5 inches by 8.25. And then what I'm going to do is use this pretty vellum that says "So Much Joy" over and over again in gold to add a little bit extra to each page to fill out the full size of the page. I decided to take some white cardstock from my stash and trim it to 7 by 8.25. I don't know why that's so difficult to say, to use as a base. And then I'm just trimming 2-inch strips off of this vellum. Initially, I was thinking I needed to trim it that way, but I forgot those papers are in fact 8.25 inches tall, so it wasn't a concern. And then I'm adhering this vellum down onto the edge of the paper and then the red paper to the rest of it, so that I'm going to have a full page spread here with the red paper across the center and the gold vellum on the edges. And then what I'm going to do is create a grid of frames on top of here. However, before I do that, I decide to punch my holes so that I know where to line everything up so I don't end up punching holes through my frames. I used the back of day 1 to punch the holes in this side because these 2 pages are going to be adhered back to back. I cannot adhere them yet because day 1 has some volume to it and it would be hard to work on top of, but I did use it as my template so that the holes would be lined up properly. And then I used a divided page protector for the other side. So now that I have my holes printed, or punched, I'm just going to lay out my frames and kind of come up with my grid. I want them staggered slightly so that, it's not a complete exact grid, but I didn't want it staggered too much because I want the frames to fit on the page. I end up using some washi tape to adhere these to the backs of the frames just so that I have them in place before I adhere them down. You will see in a little bit when I do this first side, I don't end up putting enough adhesive on, so I do have to go back and add more adhesive to the frames because the washi is kind of temporary and it doesn't really hold the photo to the frame. I probably should have added adhesive to the frame now that I'm watching this back to do the voiceover, and then added the photo on that way rather than with the washi tape, but it works. I do shift these around a little bit because I didn't like the two photos of the shelves back to back. And so I just moved my journaling so that it wasn't the first one anymore. And then onto the other page, I have 3 more photos. And then that final frame, which doesn't match, that is from the Paisley Press mini kit, I'm going to use to frame out my number. So I'm just going ahead and adhering all of these down again and then working on this number. So I've decided with this number that I like the red, but I don't like the white on the white. And so what I decided to do is go through all of my stamp sets from this year. And I pulled out this one. It has a star on it. And I got this gold ink. And this one I picked up on Amazon, and I will link it in the description box down below. But I found that this is the best gold ink just from a lot of recommendations and different ones that I have tried. This is the best one I have tried so far, and that was recommended to me. And so I'm just stamping kind of a random pattern of stars on the background here so that it's not going to be just white on white. I wanted to go so that they were going to be kind of going off the page a bit, but as far as behind the two, I didn't want them overlapping the two since I didn't have something to mask it, but it ends up working how I did it. I pushed it to the side so that the ink could dry for a bit, and I'm pulling out these strips from last year's kit. These were, I believe, in the main kit in 2022, and they have numbers 1 through 31 on them. I want to keep numbers 1 through 25 because although I didn't use them last year, I could definitely use those in an album in the future, but I never really go past the 25th. So I'm keeping so I pulled out 26 through 31. I pulled out 6 of those, and I'm using those as my strips here. So I just cut off the pieces that had the number, and I'm making just a little label on each of these. I end up cropping it down a little bit more just so that it doesn't go off the edge, and I can kind of border it with one of the numbers from the advent calendar today. And then I have my words that I typed up of each location. So we went to 6 places. So I have a photo representing each location that we went to. So I have number 1 is a coffee shop. Number 2 was a vintage emporium, warehouse location. There were 2 locations. Number 3 is a bookstore. Number 4 was a local shop. Number 5 was a late lunch / early dinner of tacos. And number 6 was the Vintage Emporium original store. So I did have a lot of photos from the Vintage Emporium, especially the warehouse location. There were like 150 vendors of vintage goods there, and it took us, I think, like 3 hours to get through it. But I had to narrow it down to just one, and I selected this one. Although it wasn't my favorite photo, it showed kind of the shelves, so it was like a display, so you could kind of see what we were doing, and so that was how I narrowed it down. You can see here I'm adding extra adhesive to the frames. I cropped off the top part of that one frame and had it going off the page, and the bottom of the one that has the journaling because it doesn't need a number or a label because that one is the one that contains my journaling. And so I'm just cropping that off there and making sure everything is adhered down. Now I'm moving on to this page. I kind of learned my lesson, and I'm putting adhesive around all of the edges of the frame in addition to on the back of the photo and adhering it down. And so I'm doing these 3 first, and I do have them staggered still, but not quite as much as the last one because I didn't want to crop off the top of a frame because that was kind of difficult to do. So I cropped down this 2, and then I'm going to adhere this to the back of the frame, just like the past, but this one, rather than using washi, I'm using just the rolling adhesive, which is what I should have done all along, and then adhering it down to the back. Again, I'm following my process for the labels and the numbers and the titles for spots 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to wrap up this page. This one is very formulaic because I had a longer story to tell. I had a lot happened this day, And I liked that I had this ability to kind of do a bird's eye view of everything that happened on the day. I will definitely document this. I believe I'm going to do probably at least one standalone scrapbook page. This will show up in my project life. And I'm considering actually doing a mini album of my local adventures. So it will probably show up in there as well. And I kind of picked up a bit of ephemera for that purpose, which is why I didn't put the ephemera in here. Okay, so I adhere those back to back. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick this back into my album. And here's a look at days 1 and 2 done in the album. Next, I have my sampler page. So I didn't work on this on day 1 because I completely forgot about it because I set this up back in September. But this is something that I did back last year. I did a sampler page and I loved it so much, I'm doing one again. So rather than a table of contents, this sampler page is basically a sampler documenting my December daily album itself. So each day is represented on here 1 through 25 in a grid, and I use the circles from the main kit to do that. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just finding something in my supplies or my stash or extra photos that represents the documenting I did on that day, because this itself is a scrapbook page about my scrapbook album, if that makes sense. So it's like scrapbooking about scrapbooking, but December daily itself is a huge part of my December. So I'm thrilled to scrapbook it and have this page stand alone. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope that you enjoyed this video. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.